We covered creating an invoice from scratch in the prior session, but there is another way to create an invoice from an estimate. Once an estimate is created, which we covered previously in Lesson 6, you can use the estimate to create an invoice by either opening up the estimate created and flipping it into an invoice, or being prompted to use the estimate when creating a new invoice for the particular customer job the estimate relates to. Let's do an example of the first way by going to the Customer Center and selecting the new garage job for Abigail Aardvark. On the bottom panel, notice that all transactions are showing, which just includes an estimate that we created in an earlier session in this lesson. If we double-click on this estimate, it will open up and show us the details of our estimate. The next step is to create an invoice from this estimate is by clicking on the Create Invoice icon, and then the pop-up window that appears prompts us to select one of three choices. We can either create an invoice using 100% of the entire estimate, or we can create an invoice for a certain percentage of the entire estimate. In this case, we would put in the percentage number we want to use, or third, we can create an invoice for selected items or for different percentages of each item. Whichever selection we make, the estimate is used to populate the invoice accordingly. In our example, let's take the first choice and flip the entire estimate in to create the invoice. Once I select my choice and hit OK, then what will happen is a new invoice will be populated from the estimate information, and I can review what has been submitted, and if everything looks good, I can simply save the new invoice and I'm done. Although it may always be a good idea to reference the estimate number in the memo field in the lower left of the invoice. Note the original estimate is saved and is not affected by this process. The other way to create an invoice from an estimate is to create a new invoice for the customer job and then be prompted to select the open estimate available to create the invoice from. Now, let's walk through how this works. First, we need to create a new invoice, so let's go to the Customer Center again, and under the New Transactions drop-down window, we'll select Invoices. The invoice screen opens up, and notice when we select Abigail's new garage job, what we get is a pop-up window showing us all the open or available estimates for Abigail. Since we only have one estimate available, we will select this one. But if there were more than one estimate available, we could use multiple estimates in creating a new invoice. Once we select the estimate we want, the same window opens up as we previously looked at, and you would go through the exact same procedures we just completed in the last example. Now, just to show you a different option than last example, I'm going to select the third choice, which will provide me with the opportunity to select which items in the estimate I want to bring over into the invoice I want to create. I can pick 0 to 100% of each item, and whatever was not selected would remain open. So let's say I want 100% of the first item, then 50% of the last item. Notice then this is what is brought over into the new invoice. And just like in the first example, I can review the invoice and make whatever changes I want and then save it accordingly. By using the estimate into Invoice feature, you can save a lot of keystrokes and reduce the chances of transposing errors.